The Grand Armada arrived at New Haven's coordinates expecting a battle. Instead, they found an empty station and a recorded message. Taeyang's voice echoed across 5,000 warships with words that made every commander's blood run cold. You taught us to hide. You taught us to run. You taught us that survival requires sacrifice. Thank you for the lessons. Now let us teach you what we learned. The station exploded in a flash of light that could be seen across the sector. It was not a weapon. It was a beacon, a signal to 47 hidden human colonies spread across the galaxy. The war has begun. Within hours, human ships appeared in 100 different systems. They struck shipyards, supply depots, communication relays. Each attack was precise, devastating, and over before the Council could respond. The quantum-fold drives made human vessels impossible to track or predict. They appeared from nowhere, struck like lightning, and vanished before return fire could even be aimed. But the Council was not defenseless. 5,000 ships might have arrived at an empty trap, but they were still 5,000 ships. They split into battle groups, spreading across Council territory to hunt down the human raiders. The galaxy erupted into war on a scale not seen in millennia. Daehyun commanded the human fleet from his flagship, orchestrating attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously. He had waited his entire life for this, dreamed of making the Council pay for what they had done. Every destroyed station, every captured outpost, every panicking Council official was a small piece of justice. But justice was expensive. The first human casualties came at the Battle of Carinth, where a strike group was cornered by superior numbers. 16 ships were destroyed before they could escape. 200 lives lost. Daehyun read each name personally, committing them to memory. They had survived 3,000 years of extinction, only to die fighting for freedom. He would not let their deaths be meaningless. Yuna coordinated the coalition forces, bringing together 30 different species who had never fought together before. The Vintari provided intelligence, the Kelthros provided warriors, the Shir provided defensive technology. Together they began winning battles that should have been impossible. At the Battle of Thyros Station, a mixed force of human and Kelthros ships destroyed a Council garrison 5 times their size. The Kelthros warriors, finally given the weapons they had been denied for 2,000 years, fought with a fury that terrified even their allies. The Council had kept them docile for generations. Now they remembered what they had been. Jeanne was only 19 years old when she became a symbol of humanity's resilience, flying a fighter craft during the defense of the outer colonies. She single-handedly destroyed 6 Council warships using tactics so unconventional that military academies would study them for decades. Her recording spread across both human and allied channels, showing that even one person could make a difference against impossible odds. But the war was not going entirely in humanity's favor. The Council's numerical advantage was crushing. For every ship the Coalition destroyed, the Council had 10 more. Casualties mounted on both sides, and the galaxy began to drown in blood. Then Drexus made his choice. The Korthan general had been assigned to lead an attack on a suspected human colony. His battle group arrived to find not a military target but a civilian settlement. Thousands of families, children playing in artificial parks, people who had never fired a weapon in their lives. His orders were clear: erase them all. Drexus looked at the orders, looked at his ships waiting for his command, looked at the peaceful colony below. And he thought about 3,000 years of genocide committed in the name of peace. He thought about the 6 species erased before humanity. He thought about the billions of lives ended because they dared to be free. All ships, he said clearly, stand down. We will not attack this target. The confusion on his bridge was immediate. His officers stared at him in shock. One of them reached for a communication console, probably to report his disobedience. Drexus was faster. His weapon appeared in his hand, pointed at his own crew. I said, stand down. Anyone who wishes to follow their orders may do so after they remove me from command. Until then, we follow mine. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, his officers stood at attention. They had seen the same things he had. They had followed the same orders. And like him, they were tired of being murderers, sir, his tactical officer said quietly. If we defect, where do we go? To the humans, Drexus answered. And we beg their forgiveness for what we did to their world. Drexus's entire battle group, 17 warships and 3,000 soldiers, changed sides. The impact was immediate and catastrophic for the Council. If a decorated general could defect, if Korthan warriors could turn against their masters, then the Council's authority was not absolute. Within days, other commanders began making similar choices. Some fled to neutral space. Others actively joined the coalition. The Council's military began to fracture. Elder Torvin watched his empire crumble with cold rage. He had ruled for 10,000 years. He had shaped the galaxy to his vision. He would not allow a species he had already killed to destroy everything he had built. Activate the erasure protocol, he ordered. Target every world in open rebellion. If they will not submit, they will die. The erasure protocol was the Council's ultimate weapon, the device that had destroyed Earth and 6 other worlds. It took days to prepare, and once activated, it would kill every living thing on the targeted planets. Torvin selected 17 worlds for erasure: human colonies, Vintari settlements, Kelthros strongholds. Trillions of lives would end to prove a simple point. The Council was eternal and resistance was death. But Minji had spent months infiltrating Council systems. She had planted digital eyes everywhere, watching for exactly this moment. The instant the erasure protocol began its activation sequence, alarms screamed across every human command center. They are going to erase 17 worlds, she reported to Taeyang. We have 72 hours before the weapons fire. Taeyang looked at the holographic display showing the targeted worlds. So many people, so many lives. He had known this moment would come. The Council would never surrender. They would burn the galaxy before they gave up power. Daehyun, he said, take every ship we have. Find the erasure facility. Destroy it. The assault on the erasure facility was the bloodiest battle of the war. It was hidden in the Council's core territory, protected by hundreds of warships and automated defenses that had never been tested in real combat. Daehyun led the attack personally, knowing that every second counted. Human ships tore through the defensive lines, taking devastating casualties but never stopping. Kelthros warriors boarded Council vessels in zero-gravity combat, fighting hand-to-hand through corridor after corridor. Shire created false sensor readings that confused the defenders. Vintari used their knowledge of Council systems to disable key defenses. And in the center of it all, Jin'e flew her fighter through impossible spaces, drawing fire away from the larger ships, giving them the seconds they needed to advance. She took hits that should have destroyed her craft, but she kept flying, kept fighting, kept believing they would win. The final assault came down to minutes. Daehyun's Marines breached the facility's core with the erasure protocol counting down. They fought through automated defenses, through Korthan guards who refused to surrender, through corridors designed to kill intruders. They reached the control room with seconds remaining. The lead Marine, a woman named Sora, looked at the countdown and realized there was no time to disable it properly. So she did the only thing she could. She fired her weapon directly into the central power core. The explosion was visible from orbit, a bloom of light that consumed the facility and everyone still inside. 173 people died in that blast, but 17 worlds were saved. Trillions of lives continued because a few hundred were willing to give everything. The Council's will broke. Without the erasure protocol, without their ultimate threat, they had no way to force compliance. Rebellions erupted across their territory. Species that had submitted for thousands of years suddenly remembered they had choices. The 2,000 civilizations that had made up the Council's empire began declaring independence. Elder Torvin made one final broadcast from Axis Prime. His holographic image appeared across the galaxy, ancient and furious. You choose chaos over order. You choose destruction over peace. The Council brought stability to the galaxy for 10 millennia. Without us, you will tear yourselves apart. Taeyang responded from his flagship, his image broadcast on the same channels. You brought control, not peace. You brought fear, not stability. You erased species that dared to be different, that dared to be free. But we survived. And now the galaxy will learn to live without you. The final battle came at Axis Prime itself. The Council's last loyal forces gathered to defend the station, knowing that if it fell, their empire would end. The Coalition fleet, now numbering over 3,000 ships from dozens of species, arrived to finish what humanity had started. But Taeyang did not want more bloodshed. He offered terms the Council would dissolve. The elder species would give up their authority. In exchange, their lives would be spared, and they would have a voice in the new galactic government. Yuna had never imagined she would become a diplomat, But war made people into what was needed. She stood in the cargo bay of a disguised transport ship, preparing to meet with representatives of the Vintari resistance. They were the first, but they would not be the last. Remember, Minji said quietly, they have lived under council rule for 1,000 years. They have forgotten what freedom looks like. You need to show them it's possible. The Vintari ship docked with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Sayok had arranged this meeting, using connections within his people's underground network. When the airlock opened, 12 Vintari emerged, their crystalline skin reflecting the harsh lights. They moved cautiously like animals expecting a trap. I am Yuna, she said simply. Thank you for coming. The leader of the Vintari group stepped forward. His name was Kiresh, and his eyes held decades of suppressed anger. You broadcast the truth about the Council's erasures. Our people are asking questions we have not dared to ask in centuries. But questions alone will not free us. What are you offering? A choice, Yuna answered. Continue living as servants or stand with us and fight. We cannot promise you will win. We cannot even promise you will survive. But we can promise you will be free, even if that freedom only lasts one day. Kirish studied her for a long moment. Then slowly he knelt. Behind him the other Vintari did the same. Our people remember the world we lost. The Council let us live only because we surrendered completely. But some of us never stopped dreaming of what we could have been. If you are truly fighting the Council, then the Vintari stand with you. It was the first alliance, but it set the pattern. Over the following months, Yuna traveled in secret to 12 different species. Each time she brought the same message. The Council ruled through fear, but fear could be broken. Each time more joined the growing coalition. The Kelthros were a warrior culture that had been forcibly pacified by the Council 2,000 years ago. Their weapons had been confiscated, their fleet dismantled, their spirit crushed. But warriors remember. When Yuna showed them recordings of human ships destroying Council outposts, the Kelthros leaders made their decision in minutes. They would fight. The Sheer were crystalline beings who communicated through light patterns. The Council used them as living computers, their vast intelligence reduced to solving equations for their masters. When Yuna offered them independence, they responded with a single pulsing question. When do we begin? Each species brought something valuable. The Vintari brought knowledge of Council systems and security. The Kelthros brought warriors who had been training in secret for generations. The Sheer brought technology for shields and communication that the Council had never bothered to study. Together they began to form something new, something dangerous, a unified resistance, but not everyone was convinced. Higher and humanity's ambassador to the neutral worlds faced a different challenge. These were species that had chosen to remain outside Council control, surviving in the gaps and shadows. They had no love for the Council, but they also had no desire to fight. You are asking us to risk everything, the Tyvik's representative said. The Council has left us alone because we are not worth their attention. If we join your war, they will destroy us. They will destroy you anyway, Hiron replied. The Council is expanding. Every year they claim more territory. How long before there are no neutral worlds left? How long before you have to choose between submission and extinction? It was a hard truth, but truth nonetheless. Slowly, reluctantly, even some of the neutral species began to send support. Not armies, but supplies, intelligence, safe harbors for ships that needed to hide. Every contribution mattered. Meanwhile, Drexus was having his own crisis. The Korthan general had served the Council his entire life, believing their mission was righteous. He had personally overseen 3 planetary erasures, telling himself it was necessary for galactic peace. But now, alone in his quarters, he reviewed the files he had recovered from the archive infiltration. The records showed everything. Earth had not been erased for aggression. The humans had been peaceful, curious, eager to join the galactic community. Their only crime had been success. They had made friends too quickly, formed bonds with other species too easily. They had been building something the Council could not control. Genuine cooperation between different civilizations. Every species he had helped erase had been guilty of the same thing. They had been independent. They had asked questions. They had dreamed of something better than Council rule, and for that billions had died. Drexus realized with cold horror that he had not been a peacekeeper. He had been a murderer. His terminal chimed with new orders. The Grand Armada was preparing to launch. 5,000 ships on a mission to exterminate every human colony. Drexus was assigned to lead the vanguard. He was expected to finish what he had started 3,000 years ago. For the first time in his life, General Drexus considered disobedience. On New Haven, Taeyang received reports of the growing alliance with satisfaction, but also concern. "We have 30 species committed to the coalition now," he said to his inner circle. "But most of them have no military strength. They have been suppressed for too long. They have something more valuable than weapons," Yuna argued. "They have knowledge. Every species that joins us brings information about council systems, territories, and weaknesses. We are building an intelligence network that spans the galaxy." Daehyun was less optimistic. "Intelligence is worthless against 5,000 warships. When the Grand Armada finds us, all the allies in the galaxy will not save us from that firepower. Then we make sure they never find our main colonies," Taeyang said. "We evacuate New Haven. We spread our population across 100 hidden locations. We become ghosts again, but this time, we are ghosts that strike back." The evacuation began immediately. 8 billion people could not be moved quickly, but they could be moved carefully. Families who had lived on New Haven for generations packed their lives into transport ships, heading to new colonies that existed only as coordinates and promises. It was terrifying, abandoning the one place that had been safe for 3,000 years, but staying meant death. Minji coordinated with Seok and the other allied species to create false intelligence. They planted evidence that New Haven was heavily fortified, that attacking it would require the full strength of the Grand Armada. Meanwhile, the real New Haven was being stripped of everything valuable, leaving behind only automated defenses and a recorded message. When the Council's scouts finally located New Haven's coordinates, they reported a massive military installation protected by powerful shields. The Grand Armada adjusted its course, preparing to crush humanity's last stronghold with overwhelming force. They had no idea they were walking into an empty trap. On Axis Prime, the 8 elders gathered one final time before the Armada launched. Elder Torvin addressed his colleagues with grim satisfaction. "In 3 months, the human threat will be eliminated. We have located their primary colony. We will reduce it to atoms, and this time we will hunt down every survivor." But in the shadows of the Council's own station, something was changing. Workers whispered about the broadcasts. Soldiers questioned their orders. Even among the Korthan military, there were those who wondered if the Council was truly worth dying for. Hyeron's intelligence network intercepted a message from deep within the Council's ranks. It was brief, encrypted, and unsigned. "Some of us do not wish to fight this war. If you seek allies within the Council itself, look to the 4th Fleet." Taeyang read the message 3 times. Someone inside the Council's own military was reaching out. It could be a trap. It could be a desperate lie. Or it could be the opportunity they needed. "Find out who sent this," he ordered Minji. "And if they are sincere, bring them into the fold." The galaxy was changing. For 10,000 years, the Council had ruled through fear and violence. But fear was a fragile thing. It only worked when everyone believed resistance was impossible. Now, humanity had shown that resistance was not only possible, it could succeed. 30 species had joined the coalition openly. Dozens more sent secret support. And somewhere in the Council's own forces, people were beginning to question whether they were truly the heroes of galactic peace, or simply the latest in a long line of tyrants. The Grand Armada launched on schedule, 5,000 ships moving toward their target with absolute confidence. They expected an easy victory. They expected to crush the last remnants of humanity and restore the Council's authority. They had no idea they were sailing into the beginning of the end. Taeyang stared at the data Minji had brought back from Axis Prime. 6 species erased before humanity. Hundreds of billions of lives ended because they dared to be independent. The Council had been murdering civilizations for 10,000 years, and the galaxy believed they were peacekeepers. "When do we move?" Daehyun asked. The Admiral stood at attention, his entire body radiating controlled violence. He had been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Now," Taeyang said, "before the Council can prepare, before they can mobilize their full strength, we hit them hard, fast, and everywhere at once." The command center of New Haven buzzed with activity as Operation Firstborn entered its final phase. On holographic displays, 12 Council military outposts appeared, marked in red. They were frontier stations, far from the Council's core worlds but strategically important. Destroying them would send a message the entire galaxy could not ignore. Bora stood on the bridge of the Shadow of Terra, humanity's most advanced stealth ship. Her mission was different from the others. While Daehyun's fleet would strike military targets, she would travel to the one place that mattered most, the coordinates where Earth had once existed. "All ships report ready," Junho said over the communications network. He commanded Strike Group 7, 20 vessels equipped with quantum fold drives that could bend space itself. "Awaiting your order, Commander." Taeyang took a deep breath. This was it. 3,000 years of preparation, 3,000 years of hiding, all leading to this single moment. "All units," he said clearly. "Execute Operation Firstborn. Show them we remember. Show them we survive. Show them that humanity has returned." Across multiple star systems, human ships appeared from nowhere. The quantum fold technology made them impossible to track, impossible to predict. One moment space was empty. The next, human warships materialized and opened fire with weapons that tore through Council shields like paper. At Outpost Karathi, the garrison commander barely had time to sound the alarm before his station exploded. At Outpost Ven, Council fighters launched to defend against the attack but found themselves fighting enemies that vanished and reappeared faster than their targeting systems could track. At Outpost Drin, the entire facility went dark in seconds as electromagnetic pulses fried every system simultaneously. Daehyun watched from his flagship as 12 red markers turned gray on the tactical display. 12 outposts destroyed in less than an hour. Not a single human casualty. The Council's forces had not known what hit them. "Send the message," Daehyun ordered. "Let them know who did this." Across every frequency, in every language spoken in Council space, the same broadcast played. It was simple, just a few words, but those words would shake the galaxy to its core. Humanity survived. Humanity remembers. Humanity has returned. Meanwhile, Bora's ship glided silently through the void, approaching the memorial coordinates. Her sensors detected the debris first, fragments of rock drifting in ancient orbits. These were the remains of Luna, Earth's moon, torn apart but not destroyed. She had expected to feel sadness seeing the ruins of humanity's lost home. Instead, she felt rage. "Take us in closer," she told her pilot. "I want to land on the largest fragment." The Shadow of Terra descended carefully, touching down on a piece of rock that had once been part of the moon's mare Tranquillitatis. This was where humans had first walked on another world, back when Earth still existed, back when humanity dreamed of the stars without knowing those stars would become their only refuge. Bora suited up and stepped outside, her boots crunching on ancient lunar dust. In the distance, she could see other fragments floating in the darkness, a graveyard of humanity's past. But she had not come here to mourn. She had come here to make a promise. From her pack, she pulled a flag. It was not the flag of any Earth nation, because those nations were dust. This was humanity's new banner, designed on New Haven, representing all 47 colonies and 8 billion survivors. She planted it firmly in the lunar soil, and then she activated the broadcast beacon. "My name is Bora," she said, knowing her words were being transmitted to every corner of known space. "I stand on what remains of humanity's first step into space. 3,000 years ago, the Galactic Council erased our home. They killed billions. They turned our planet to dust. They believed they had ended us." She looked up at the stars, at the galaxy that had turned its back on humanity. They were wrong. We survived in the darkness. We grew strong in the shadows. We learned from our enemies. And now we have returned, not as the species you destroyed, but as something greater. We are no longer asking for your permission to exist. We are here. We are alive, and we will not be erased again. The broadcast ended, but the beacon continued transmitting humanity's flag across the galaxy. Every sensor array, every communication system, every data network would pick up the signal. The Council could not hide this. The galaxy would know the truth. On Axis Prime, Drexus recovered from Siok's attack and immediately demanded an emergency council session. The 8 elder species gathered in their private chambers, their holographic forms projecting from their distant homeworlds. They had ruled the galaxy for 10 millennia. Nothing had ever challenged their authority. Until now, the humans are extinct, Elder Torvin said flatly. He was the oldest, the one who had personally ordered Earth's erasure. "This is impossible. I saw them myself," Drexus reported. "They infiltrated our station, accessed our archives, escaped our security. Their technology is more advanced than ours. Their ships move in ways we cannot predict, and now they have destroyed 12 of our outposts in simultaneous strikes across multiple sectors. How many escaped Earth's destruction? Another elder asked, unknown. But their broadcast claims 47 colonies and 8 billion individuals. If true, they are a significant force. Silence fell over the council chambers. Finally, Torvin spoke again. Then we finish what we started. We mobilize the Grand Armada. We find every human colony and we erase them all completely. This time we make no mistakes. The vote was unanimous. 5,000 warships, the largest military force ever assembled by the Council, would hunt down humanity and destroy them forever. The orders went out immediately, and across Council space military commanders began preparing for war. But something else was happening, something the Council did not anticipate. Minji's data about the 6 erased species had also been included in humanity's broadcast. Now every civilization under Council rule knew the truth. The Council did not protect them. The Council killed anyone who became too powerful, too independent, too free. On 100 worlds, people began to whisper. On 1,000 stations, officials began to question their loyalty. And in the darkest corners of Council space, suppressed species began to wonder, if the humans could survive and return, what else was possible? Taeyang watched the reports flood in. The Council was mobilizing for war exactly as expected, but there were other messages too. Encrypted communications from species he had never heard of, from civilizations tired of Council control, from people who saw humanity's return as a spark of hope. They are sending 5,000 ships, Yuna said, reading the intelligence reports. That is 10 times larger than our entire fleet. Then we don't fight them head on, Taeyang replied. We fought and we showed the galaxy we exist. Now we show them we're not alone. Contact everyone who has reached out to us. It's time to build an alliance, Daehyun crossed his arms. You are talking about starting a galactic revolution? No, Taeyang corrected. I am talking about finishing the revolution Earth started 3,000 years ago. The Council erased us because we were uniting other species, creating bonds they could not control. They feared what we might become, so let us become exactly what they feared. Let us show the galaxy that freedom is possible. Yuna smiled. Then we have work to do. As the Council's Grand Armada prepared to launch as 5,000 warships gathered to crush humanity once and for all, a different kind of force was gathering in the shadows. Species that had never spoken to each other were beginning to talk. Civilizations that had accepted Council rule for centuries were beginning to question. And at the center of it all, 8 billion humans who had survived extinction were teaching the galaxy the most dangerous lesson possible, that even the Council could be defied. Axis Prime was the largest structure Minji had ever seen. The station hung in space like a metal planet, home to millions of beings from across the galaxy. Ships came and went like insects around a hive, carrying diplomats and merchants and soldiers from 2,000 different worlds. This was the heart of the Galactic Council, the center of power that ruled known space. Minji's team had been waiting 3 weeks for their audience with the Council representatives. They called themselves the Travelers, a nomadic species that had only recently discovered the Council's existence. Their ship was deliberately crude, their technology primitive enough to seem harmless. Everything about them was designed to attract curiosity without raising suspicion. Are you nervous? Jiwon asked. She stood beside Minji, dressed in the simple robes they had designed for their false culture. Jiwon had a gift for languages that bordered on supernatural. She could mimic any accent, any pattern of speech. For this mission, she had created an entirely new language for their fake species. Terrified, Minji admitted, but fear keeps us sharp. Hyunwoo was already at work in their quarters, his fingers dancing across holographic screens. The tech specialist had managed to tap into the station's lower-level networks, gathering information without triggering security. So far, they had learned the Council's patrol schedules, security protocols, and the locations of several data archives. The fourth member of their team was not human. Seok was Vintari, a species that had barely survived their own encounter with the Council 1,000 years ago. His people had submitted completely, becoming servants and laborers for the elder species. But some Vintari remembered what freedom meant. Seok was one of them. The Council representatives will see you now, a mechanical voice announced. The door to their quarters opened, revealing an escort of armed guards. They were Korthan, a warrior species that served as the Council's military enforcers. Tall and covered in scales, they carried weapons that could vaporize a person in seconds. Minji and Jiwon followed the guards through corridors of polished metal, passing beings of every imaginable shape and size. Some walked on 2 legs, others on 4 or 6. Some breathed oxygen, others methane or ammonia. The Council had brought them all together under one rule, but Minji could see the fear in their eyes. This was not unity, this was control. The audience chamber was enormous, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. 3 Council representatives sat on raised platforms, looking down at the visitors like gods judging mortals. The one in the center was Drexus, a Korthan general whose reputation was built on violence. He had personally overseen the destruction of 3 entire civilizations. His eyes were the color of old blood. "You claim to be the travelers," Drexus said, his voice echoing through the chamber. "You claim to seek knowledge of the greater galaxy." Jiwon spoke in the false language they had created, her voice humble and respectful. Minji watched the translation software work, turning their invented words into something the Council could understand. "We are a young people. We have much to learn. We bring gifts as a sign of our peaceful intentions." The gifts were carefully chosen pieces of technology, interesting enough to seem valuable but primitive enough to reinforce their cover story. The Council representatives examined them with obvious disinterest. They had seen 1,000 species come begging for acceptance. The travelers were nothing special. "You may remain on Axis Prime while we consider your petition," Drexus finally said. "Do not wander where you are not permitted. Do not interfere with Council business. If you prove useful, perhaps you will earn a place in our civilization." It was a dismissal, but it was also an opportunity. They had access to the station now. They could move freely in certain areas. Most importantly, they were beneath suspicion. Over the following weeks, Minji's team worked with careful precision. Hyunwoo continued his digital infiltration, slowly working his way deeper into the Council systems. Jiwon made friends with low-level officials, gathering gossip and information. Serk used his knowledge of Vintari service areas to access restricted sections of the station. Minji focused on the archives. She had discovered that the Council kept records of everything, including the species they had erased. Late at night, when the corridors were empty, she slipped into the historical section and began to search. What she found made her blood run cold. Earth was not the first. Before humanity, there had been 6 other civilizations marked for erasure. The Kelnar, who had developed quantum technology independently. The Thresh, who had begun forming alliances without Council approval. The Yithran, who had simply asked too many questions about Council authority. Each time the official records claimed the species had been too dangerous, too aggressive, too unpredictable. Each time the truth was simpler. They had been too independent. The Council did not erase species to protect the galaxy. They erased anyone who might challenge their power. Minji copied every file she could find, storing them in encrypted formats that Hyunwoo had designed. This was the evidence they needed, proof that the Council was built on genocide and lies. But she also found something else, something that made her heart race with hope. Earth was gone, but its moon had survived. Luna had been caught in the edge of the erasure field, torn apart but not completely destroyed. The largest fragments still drifted in the space where Earth had once stood, silent monuments to humanity's lost world. She was still reading when Hyunwoo's urgent message reached her. "Someone is investigating us. Get out now." Minji grabbed the data crystal and ran. Behind her, she could hear alarms beginning to sound. Had she triggered a security system? Had someone seen her where she should not be? She did not wait to find out. The corridors blurred as she sprinted toward their ship, her heart hammering in her chest. Jiwon and Seok were already at the docking bay preparing for emergency departure. Hyunwoo was deleting their digital footprints as fast as he could, covering their tracks, but as Minji reached the ship, she saw Drexus standing at the bay entrance blocking their escape. "The travelers," he said slowly, his red eyes studying them with new interest. "You have been very curious about subjects that should not concern you. Tell me, what is a primitive species doing in the historical archives?" "We wanted to learn," Jiwon said quickly, maintaining their cover. "We meant no offense." "You lie," Drexus said flatly. "Your language is false. Your ship's components are far more advanced than you pretend. Your behavior follows patterns of trained intelligence operatives, not naive explorers. He stepped closer, his hand resting on his weapon. Who are you really? For a moment, Minji considered maintaining the deception. But looking into Drexus's eyes, she knew he would never believe them now. They had one chance, one desperate gamble. We are the species you failed to erase, she said clearly. We are human, and we remember everything you did to us. The shock on Drexus's face was worth the risk. For just a second, the mighty council enforcer looked genuinely afraid. Then his expression hardened, and his weapon began to rise. But Siak was faster. The Vintari moved like lightning, striking Drexus in the nerve cluster at his neck. The general collapsed, unconscious before he hit the ground. Go! Siak shouted. Before the others come, they ran for the ship, the docking bay's emergency doors beginning to close. Their vessel launched with seconds to spare, diving into the chaos of station traffic before the Council's warships could react. Behind them, Axis Prime erupted in activity as the alarm spread. The humans had returned. As they jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Council space behind, Minji clutched the data crystal in her hand. They had what they came for. They had the truth about the Council's crimes. And now the Council knew that humanity was still alive. The war had begun. The alarms never rang on the day Earth died. There was no warning, no final goodbye. The planet simply ceased to exist, turned to dust by weapons so powerful they could unmake worlds. 3,000 years had passed since that day, but the memory lived on in every human heart, like a wound that never healed. Taeyang stood on the observation deck of New Haven Station, staring at the purple nebula that hid humanity's greatest secret. Beyond the swirling clouds of cosmic gas lay 47 colonies, home to 8 billion people who should not exist. The Galactic Council believed they had erased humanity completely. They were wrong. Commander, the council meeting is ready, a voice said behind him. Taeyang turned to see Yuna approaching, her tablet glowing with strategic reports. She was younger than him by a decade, but her mind worked faster than anyone he had ever known. While others saw only military solutions, Yuna saw possibilities. How many years have we prepared for this moment? Taeyang asked, though he already knew the answer. 3,000 years of hiding. 3,000 years of building. 3,000 years of waiting. Yuna stood beside him, her reflection ghostly in the transparent steel. The question is whether we're ready to stop hiding. They walked together through corridors carved from asteroid rock, passing families who lived entire lives without seeing a natural sun. Children played in artificial parks under dome lights that mimicked Earth's lost sky. Old people gathered in memory halls, listening to recordings of birdsong and ocean waves that their ancestors had saved before the end. Every person here carried the weight of extinction on their shoulders. The council chamber sat deep in the station's heart, protected by layers of armor and silence. Inside, the holographic displays showed a map of known space, with the Galactic Council's territory marked in red. It covered most of the galaxy like a spreading disease. The council consisted of 8 elder species who ruled over 2,000 younger civilizations. They decided who lived and who died. They had decided humanity should die. Daehyun was already there, his scarred hands folded on the table. The admiral had lost his wife and children in a council raid 15 years ago, when a human scouting ship had been discovered and destroyed. Since that day, he had lived for only one purpose: revenge. Beside him sat Minji, whose quiet eyes missed nothing. She had spent decades studying the Council's languages, customs, and weaknesses. If humanity was going to strike back, they would need her knowledge. The Council is expanding, Minji said without greeting. Her hologram showed new territories being claimed. They're moving toward our sector. In 5 years, maybe 10, they'll find us. We can't hide forever. Taeyang took his seat at the head of the table. Around him sat the representatives of humanity's survival, men and women who had sacrificed everything to keep their species alive. Then we don't hide. We act. We're 8 billion against trillions, one of the older council members said. Even with our technology, the numbers are impossible. Daehyun leaned forward, his voice like gravel. Our technology makes us equal. The quantum fold drives let our ships appear and disappear faster than they can track. Our weapons are 3,000 years more advanced than theirs. We've had nothing to do but innovate while they grew comfortable and lazy. Military strength isn't enough, Yuna interrupted. She activated her own display, showing the internal politics of the council. They've erased 6 other species before us. We found the records. Each time they called it necessary for galactic peace. But what if the other civilizations knew the truth? What if they knew the Council kills anyone who might challenge their power? Silence fell over the room. What Yuna was suggesting was more than war. It was revolution. You want to turn the galaxy against them, Taiyang said slowly. I want to give the galaxy a choice, Yuna corrected. Right now they believe the Council protects them. We show them the truth and everything changes. First we need intelligence, Minji said. I can get a team into Council space. We pose as a new species seeking membership. We get access to their archives, their communication networks, their secrets. Daehyun shook his head. Too dangerous. If they discover who you really are, then we'll be no worse off than we already are, Minji cut him off. We're already marked for extinction. At least this way we gather the weapons we need to fight back. The debate continued for hours, but Taeyang had already made his decision. He could see it in Yuna's eyes, in Minji's determined expression, even in Daehyun's reluctant acceptance. Humanity had been running for 3,000 years. It was time to stop. Operation Firstborn is approved, Taeyang announced. Minji, select your team. Daehyun, begin preparing the fleet for mobilization. Yuna, start reaching out to our intelligence networks. Find me every dissatisfied species, every suppressed colony, every civilization that has reason to hate the Council. As the meeting ended and people filed out, Yuna remained behind. You know there's no going back from this, she said quietly. Once we reveal ourselves, the Council will come for us with everything they have. Taeyang looked at the map of the galaxy, at the red territory that had swallowed humanity's home. They already took everything from us once. Our planet, our history, billions of lives. What more can they take? Our future, Yuna answered. Everything we've built here. All 8 billion lives that exist because 12 ships escaped Earth's destruction. He met her gaze. And if we do nothing, the Council eventually finds us and finishes what they started. At least this way we die fighting. At least this way we have a chance. Yuna smiled, and it was not a happy expression. Then let's make sure we don't die at all. 3 months later, Minji's ship departed from New Haven. It was small, designed to look like a vessel from a primitive civilization, just discovering faster-than-light travel. Inside were 5 people who carried humanity's hopes. They jumped into Council space, and for the first time in 3,000 years, humans walked openly among the species that had destroyed their world. Back on New Haven, Taeyang watched the stars and remembered Earth. He remembered the blue oceans and green forests that he had never seen except in ancient recordings. He remembered the cities of light and the mountains that touched the sky. Most of all, he remembered the people, billions of them, who had died in an instant because the Council feared what humanity might become. We're coming home, he whispered to the darkness, and this time, the galaxy will remember us forever. In the shipyards hidden throughout the nebula, the construction crews worked day and night. They built vessels of war unlike anything the galaxy had seen. They forged weapons powered by sciences the Council had never imagined. They prepared for the day when humanity would step out of the shadows and into the light. That day was coming soon.